Okay, back at it here with the most boring vlog in the world on pinball restoration repair. Working on this high speed. Got it flipped over with the other playfield here. I'm basically having to go through and swap over components piece by piece, doing polishing and things like that. You don't want to just I personally don't want to just strip everything off and then take it to the buffer and buff it out and then bring it in, then have to kind of puzzle it all back together. So I kind of just go in group and what did I drop? I go through and grab the posts, take them out, buff them, bring that back in, mount these components. Same over here, etc., etc. Until by the time it's all done, everything's in its rightful place and everything's been buffed out and looks really nice. Which it has. These are not new posts. These are the old posts that have just been given a good polish. The polisher costs you $50, and unless the post is physically stripped or chewed up or corroded to the point it's not worth redoing, go for it. It's easy to do. It doesn't cost you anything other than the buffer. So you do make a little bit of a mess with the buffing wheel kind of shredding to pieces over time, but other than that, real quick and easy. I put some LEDs down under here to mount these because the LEDs are hidden, and I did want to get these return guides mounted, so I just went ahead and put that in. I think for the rest of them, though, I'm not going to cover anything up. I'm going to leave all this open, and because I do have some more LEDs on order. I think my order from Comet Black Friday sale, I got about $250 worth of product coming in. Just GI bulbs is all I bought. But I'm out. I've got wedge base cools and sunlights, but I'm out of bayonets, so I guess not out, but I've got a handful. So I'm gonna leave all that off and then wait till I have all that. I'll keep going with the install, but I'll wait till I have those bulbs before I really cover stuff up and get deep in the woods, because these bulbs involve the ramp. I'm not going to undo the ramp just to change bulbs out right after I put it on. So I just got to be a little bit selective in how far I go with this. This poor guy. This is the original playfield that was in it. And yeah, I mean, you just see what we're working with here. And then you go over to this guy, which was an original playfield that completely cleaned, touched up all over, clear coated, sanded, buffed out. This is going to be excellent. This one, however, this is beyond that. There's no way you're going to bring this thing back to life. So it either needs to get reprinted or an overlay or a hardtop. But I remembered that I do have an overlay. So I think what's going to happen, I've never done an overlay. I've never done an overlay or a hardtop. I've only ever done touch-ups and clear and buff outs. So I think this will be the first overlay that I do. How extreme I have to go with it, I think it's pretty extreme, actually. I think to do an overlay right, you gotta sand everything completely off down to nothing, level everything off, spray it with a seal coat, and then possibly even replace some inserts if they need it. But I think all these inserts are pretty good. If anything, they're raised a little bit. They're not cupped or sank, so sanding will shrink them back down in there. That way, when you put an overlay down, it'll bite on and not have any void space or anything. But I got to read up on that and really watch a lot of videos to see what's going on with that. But that's for a later, way down the line thing. I wouldn't just throw a playfield out unless it was, covered in animal stuff. So this guy, I think this is going to be a decent candidate to put that overlay on and just keep it or sell it for the next guy. I mean, high speeds come around. I've already done one, and now I'm doing a second. I really don't want to do a third. So maybe I'll, I've got the overlay, might as well. But what else have I gotten into here? This is what I was talking about earlier with, these were not meant to be taken apart to this degree. They don't have harnesses on a lot of this stuff. They've got just the wiring that was hard soldered into stuff. So, this isn't something for the faint of heart. You gotta take good photos and make really good notes and just kind of know what you're doing. I just shoved these up here to get them up here. I think there's actually a couple points where this wiring is supposed to come up, so I got to go and reference my photos. I just needed to get it above the playfield so I could kind of get an idea of where the rest of this stuff goes. So, wiring here, there, and everywhere. So it'll take a while to get all that sorted out. I still got a couple spots underneath the playfield that I need to stitch together, specifically in the GI for back here. Once I get the new pops in, switches mount, or get the GI fixed, and then I can get the switches mounted. And then I think I've got one loose GI socket that's just kind of floating because I was working on it late at night and didn't want to get the stapler out with anybody being able to hear that. It's the plastics on this thing suck, not good at all. I don't have them all in here. Some of it's still out in the garage, but I mean, these return lane guide plastics, it's probably not coming through on the camera, a little bit there, but I mean, that degree of warping that's right there is how proud they are of the surface that they're laying on. They're supposed to be flat, but I mean, with that amount of warpage, they're like sloped on the sides, just from heat and age and things like that. This guy here is really bad. Kind of see some of the curvature that's going on there. The other thing that goes on with these return lane guides, and thankfully they do make new ones of these, the ball where it strikes is actually on the metal, and when that happens, it over time starts to indent the return lane guides, and then it makes a little lip. So when I touch this, there's actually a lip on that steel. It's not smooth. Up here it is, because the ball doesn't strike this. It strikes right here, so you get a lip. So you can file all that down and mess with it and everything, but you can just go to Cliffy's Protectors, whatever, I don't know where he's at, passionforpinball.com, buy new lane guides and swap those out. But what I actually like to do with mine, just because I like to be able to control certain factors in how the ball transitions from the guide to the flipper, I make them out of polycarbonate. So I'll take a piece of polycarbonate, which is basically bulletproof glass, just a thin sheet that I get from the hardware store. I always have it for making stuff like this. But I will trace these lane guides onto that polycarbonate, and then I will rough cut it out, and then do my final cut on it, smooth it all out. And the objective is not to do it 100% exact to the piece. What I'm actually doing is I trace it, and then wherever the front edge is right here, and then the front lip here that wraps around the bushing, I'll just make that a little bit taller. So on here I'll add probably from this edge to this edge, I'll add like a 1/16 of an inch. That's really all you need. Anything more will be overkill. So a 1/16 of an inch. So now if you do that, what it allows you to do is get a better transition and from the lane guide onto the flipper, just in case the flipper sits a little bit forward, or for whatever reason things might not be aligned the way you like it. You have control over that. So the ball always rolls down smoothly. It doesn't get stuck. It doesn't run slowly and then hit the edge of the bumper or the rubber and then stop. So it gives you that control. And then it allows you to also clear the gap. Sometimes there's a gap that's left between the guide and the back of the rubber. And if you make these clear protectors, then you can fill that gap just enough so that the ball literally has nowhere that it can get hung up. I've got it on my other games, some of my old Williams games that I've done that on, and it works great. It's a little bit of time. You got to have a Dremel and some files and a buffer and some patience and things like that. But works out awesome, and it's polycarbonate, so it's not going to break. It's not like acrylic or anything like that. You can clobber the snot out of it, and you're just really not going to hurt it. So, and it's a lot cheaper. You know, I think a set of Cliffies probably cost you $30, but an entire sheet of polycarbonate that you can use for infinite numbers of projects cost you about $40. So, yeah, it's worth it to me. And he does make upgraded lane guides that do try and do that, where they add a little bit of extra meat to allow the ball to transition better. But even those, you may have varying degrees of success on that working out the way you want it to. So, you know, these are otherwise in good shape. So I think I'll just make my little protectors. And the way I fit them in there, actually, I should probably go over that, is I just remove the spacer that's below, and I sandwich the spacer, or the protector between the spacer and the lane guide here. So you're basically just making it so it's spacer, protector, steel lane guide, and then spacer and the plastic. So you don't really see it unless you're looking straight down on it, and the idea is you don't see it. You know, you're not paying attention to it because A, it's only a tiny little lip, and B, it's clear. So, you know, nobody cares. I don't know what else I found on here. I don't know where the little star rollovers are. I've got some new ones that I need to install. Those can be kind of tricky because when you clear coat something, the clear coat adds just enough of a little bit of a edge on there that the star doesn't want to either insert or not pop back up correctly. So you kind of have to get in there with a X-Acto knife, little razor knife, and just very, very, very carefully run the knife along the edges of that star. And then you try it out again, and once it stops bunching up on you, then you press it down in there and you see how it goes. But yeah, that clear coat can be kind of a bugger in those stars. There are ways to prepare for it before you clear coat so that you're not filling that up. And I always take those measures, but you know, you're spraying paint, you're spraying clear, so you will get some degree of it in there. It's just inevitable. I remember having a little bit of a struggle with all this crap jammed in here on the last one because I had the micro switch shorting out the contacts up against this rail. It was either that one or no, it wasn't this one. It was this one. Just because the way it was made, they've got the switch in there in such a way that it's literally sandwiched with nowhere to go. So and there's no extra tolerance in there. It just doesn't have any space whatsoever. So if you set this screw just a little too far back that way, then all of a sudden you're now shorting up against the switch. So I'm gonna have to be careful when I'm dealing with that. Another common thing is fighting these switch actuators. The ball likes to, depending on the situation, the ball gets dropped into there from the diverter, and then it gets hung up on the actuator. It's a really long actuator. It's not like a typical one about EA. It's like that long. So you've got to kind of work the angles on it and get it straight, get it at the right angle, and get it under the right tension so that it all works together and doesn't get the ball hung up when it's going onto the switch and when it's leaving the ball popper. It's just a balancing act with this stuff sometimes. Oh, what else do I got here? All the fun bits like the ramps and habit trails is out in the garage, so I'm not quite to that stage yet, but I'm just doing a little progress update on where I am. Overall, I'm pretty excited with how it's coming out. I forgot how nice this Playfield did turn out, because this was done years ago, and it wasn't. I redid this one. It took me a long time, and I eventually got to a point where I just wasn't going to be 100% happy with it. And so I didn't give up on the playfield. I gave up on the playfield in my game. So I bought a new CPR playfield and I installed that in my game. And then I kept this one. I did all the final touch ups and got it. I made some kind of concessions on how I did things. And then I cleared it, buffed it all out, and gave it to a friend. But then this whole thing's came back to me over these years. So now I have the playfield. Now I'm actually going to use it, and it looks great. I was being, very, very critical of it at the time, but unless I was walking around conducting somebody from point to point saying I did touch up here, here, and here, they just really have a hard time to find all that stuff. Just because a lot of it just does not stand out. I mean, there's little things that stand out, like the gradients in here. Gradients are incredibly hard to do touch up on. You can see it if you really zoom in there. But just little stuff. When you're standing over the game, you don't see it. You see it when you're zoomed in on a stinking camera, though. The one that really bugged me was down here. This is another gradient. It goes from yellow with a red gradient stipple, and then it works itself to a little more red, or less yellow, however they do the screen printing, till eventually it just transitions into this kind of hot pink sort of color that Williams was known for using in a lot of their pins. But the gradient drops off right here, and that's because so much of it was missing. I don't know if there was a bad ball that was in this or what, but there was just so much of it that was missing, and it was just impossible to go through and perfectly, accurately set every single one of those little dots in a way that was going to be pleasing, because your eyes are not drawn to a million little dots. What your eyes are drawn to is the one little dot that's not where it's supposed to be. Instead of being here, it's here, and you just see it. So having to try and execute that perfectly, which, believe me, I tried, wasn't happy with it. So I instead did this fade, kind of just directly into that hot pink color, and it turned out really well. It looks really nice. At the time it bugged me. There was a bunch missing in the car. All the blacks were blown out, all the little rings. I mean, this was wood, so I had to recreate all the blacks. The trees blown out, I had to redo the trees. The clouds, this area, unless it's a Mylar from the factory, it just kind of got destroyed and turned into what you see over there a lot of times. But every single square inch of this, that was another problem, was it wasn't just like one area. This thing had either been stored in a weird spot or just been played to a degree that it didn't have huge chunks of missing paint with exposed wood everywhere. What it had was literally thousands of dots down to the wood, where the paint had just chipped and then flaked off. So, or the screen printing. So in this track alone, I mean, if you really zoom in on this, you'll just see these tiny little dots that I had to go through and recreate. Now, thankfully, from a player's angle and even closer, it just really blends in, and that's just hours and hours and hours of fussing with it. But if you look at it, if you start zooming in tighter, you can see it. But that's on a camera. In real life here, it's not interesting at all. So that's good. The camera's telling stories that aren't really here to be told in the real world. But a lot of work. And I am happy with it. I just, at the time, I was so in the weeds with this stupid thing, spending so many hours, that I just got so frustrated that it wasn't going to be up to my standard of what I was trying to do with that machine, because that machine was the one that I really dug in hard, and I did top to bottom, cabinet, insert board, back box. I always redo all the electronics and get new caps and new sockets and new connectors and all that stuff. But I mean, I overhauled the snot out of this game, converted all the displays, brand new old stock Williams back glass, new legs, new ramp, just made it choice. And this one wasn't up to that standard for what I was trying to do with the rest, so I didn't do it. I'm glad I made that decision at the time, because what it did was it recharged my motivation. And that's one of the hardest things to do in any hobby, but in a hobby like this where you can have your roller coaster ride of successes and failures, it's hard to recapture that motivation. When you do, you need to capitalize on it. And $1,000 is not anything anybody wants to dump into one single item on a pinball machine that they're trying to redo, especially one that, by all accounts, at that time it was only worth about $1,000 or so. But what it did was it turbocharged the motivation. So if you have something like that where you're like, man, I just don't want to do this project anymore because I don't want to rebuild the boards. Okay, well, if you had working boards, would you be then motivated to do the rest of the game? Because if you are, yeah, you don't want to buy new boards, but maybe on this one, just this one time, or for now, or whatever it is, spend the money, buy the boards, and move on. And then, you'll have a spare set of boards that when you get a little bit more money, send them off, get them repaired. They'll be ready for the next one. And you're good to go. But at least you jump that hurdle. It's at the expense of money, but, what's your time and frustration worth? So these things are a huge time sink, ton of effort, ton of dedication to get them from any condition to the next step. It's just, even if you're just trying to do a light tune-up on a game, a shop out and LEDs. Well, a lot of times that's a weekend really doing it right, depending on the game. So, your time and frustration is worth something. And if it helps you jump to that next level, just bite the bullet, buy the thing, spare yourself a lot of headache, because the fun gets lost when you get hung up on one specific thing. But, I did it back then, got my Playfield, got my game to where I wanted it to be, and then here I am now looking at the discarded Playfield, going, man, this thing's nice. This is, holy cow, this thing is really, really top dog for an original Playfield. There's so many original Playfields that are otherwise nice, but they've got planking going everywhere and cupped insert. I mean, this thing's great. So I'm thrilled with what I'm looking at in front of me. And I don't look forward to doing the rest of it, though. I can tell you that. The cabinet on this particular machine sucks, and I hate painting. So that's not going to be any fun, but that's enough of me.